Hey guys, it's Disaster Area here with another video. This one being a team building guide on Spike's offense in ADV 50. So this is sort of intending to be part of a series. I would have started this a couple weeks earlier, but life got in the way as it does. And yeah, I kind of want to approach things by archetype because going between different archetypes, the approach can vary quite a lot. I already did make a generic video on team building principles and so on, but these should really help with like specific styles. And bear in mind, of course, as well with this, that with time it may become less relevant as Pokemon in ADV 50 can change with time. So some stuff I say may be a little bit off, but hopefully you can still apply a lot of this even years from now, still find it a very useful video if you're not sure where to begin with team building in ADV 50. And yeah, Spike's offense has really taken off since Tauros was added to the tier, and then like Sceptile, Xatu, other Pokemon, and generally the changes have really enabled offense to kick off. Spike's offense is kind of like the most simple, straightforward version of it. In terms of other forms of offense, just for comparison, Sun offense, I mean Sun and Rain offense both will often use spikes, and both are at the moment very rare for reasons I may get to another time. I do put some of it down to like Cloud9 Golduck, but anyway, that's sort of neither here nor there. That's what's coming up on the tiering front kind of thing, because I've got ideas to fix those. And then besides weather offense, which sometimes does use spikes, there's also Baton Pass based offense, and Belly Drum as well, which they tend to be pretty closely connected, and you can use spikes with those, but you tend to not quite have the space and tend to be focused on using other tools, Explosion, Subpass, maybe a Memento, like those kind of tools, often to set up like a Belly Drum sweep, or to get in Pokemon like Typhlosion and so on that are really powerful behind a substitute when they can get an extra hit in. So that's the sort of comparison, but I've put some of the key Pokemon just on in the thumbnail as I'm talking as well. You can see like Glalie there, as well as like Tauros, Sceptile, Crobat. Many of these Pokemon are among the most used in the tier. Even Glalie's usage is quite high, even though you may think of it, if you're familiar with your Smogon tiering, as just being like the star of ADV, and you're like, well, what the heck can it do here, when there's like a tier with Fortress in it and stuff. And it's a good offensive spiker. It does help that it's only Fortress that it's competing against, but there was a point when there was Cacturn as well, and Glalie took off while Cacturn didn't. But yeah, it's very synonymous with Spike's offenses, Glalie. Let's sort of get though into the general structure of these teams. What do you need to make Spike's offense work, and also make it that versus something else? So naturally, you need a spiker. Generally speaking, you need 3 to 4 offensive threats, and then you need 1 to 2 glues. So I'll go into these all in a bit more detail, and I'll also mention that, like, some of this is a bit ambiguous. Like, first of all, some offensive threats are kind of glues anyway, like Muck, for example. And secondarily, the glues, you would tend to adapt your glues to be more offensive on this kind of team as well. So, like, if you had a Muck, it would be like a Focus Punch Explosion one rather than a Curse one, which suits Balance and Stall a lot better. Or Aggron, you might run Choice Band here rather than, like a Taunt Toxic set, which you see on Balance plenty. And then there's also some sort of more ambiguous utility Pokemon as well, which don't really fit under either of these. And I'll get to those as well. But they can kind of fit in either the glue or offensive threat box, and it's all look a little bit ambiguous, but it should help you sort of guide your structures. Like, well, what should these teams look like? And I'll get to specific examples, mostly from the samples. I've got like 1 or 2 that aren't in there currently as well, that I'd like to sort of show off and show how can different Spike's offenses look. But yeah, if we go first to the spikers, and we'll talk about these. So there's only these 2 in the tier. Fortress's strength over Glalie is it switches into stuff. So with Glalie, you generally would use it as a lead. With Fortress, it's not that it can't lead, and you some styles of team do lead it, but on offense, it tends to be if you're using Glalie, you want to lead Glalie. If you're using Fortress, you want to lead something else. And we'll get to leads as well again in like a bit more detail, but in terms of, what they do, Fortress is like a spiker that switches in. It's got rapid spin. It can explode. It's got some other tools like counter as well to its disposal. Oh my goodness. At its disposal. Goodness me. Can't speak English, man. If you're not native English speaking, is a reminder that even the native speakers screw crap up all the time. So don't worry, you're doing great. Love you guys. And yeah, Glalie strengths are, it's got a bit more speed, it's got taunt, stab ice beam is nice to let like check Altaria and bother grass types, but also like the free item slot as well, that it does just enable a lot of different things. So like a Lumberry, for example, gives it a bit of an edge versus like Hypnosis Golduck and Sleep Powder Venomoth, or Endurance Salatberry helps it take out, helps it check stuff like CB Tauros or Choice Bound Crowbat, and so on, like fast defensive threats that are really annoying for this kind of team. I mean, this kind of team is also probably like using it themselves, like a Crobat or something, but it helps get a speed advantage in like clutch situations in fast-paced games, which is what you get if this team faces another offensive team. And there's quite a few ways of tweaking it as well. Icy Wind is something I've been thinking about recently. It's more for like sun-based spikes offense, like with Vileplume. But if you pair that with a Lumberry, then against lead Golduck, then you can Icy Wind first, and then like Spike, maybe Taunt after that as well, and then like Magneton or Vileplume or whatever can be EV'd to outspeed a -1 Golduck without any issue. So like that's like something you can do with it as well. But yeah, generally it's the fact that it's got a lot of tricks up its sleeves, the fact that it's more flexible. You can run like HP Fire as well is like another idea I think I use on one of the teams, because Fortress does love to switch into Glalie if it can. Even though like Taunt may cause it some troubles and can spin blockers and so on. There's a lot of ways to mess with Fortress, but HP Fire actively lures it for stuff like CB Tauros and CB Crobat to be more dangerous later. So that's like another of its tricks as well, whereas in Fortress versus Fortress, there's a bit less of an edge than having like an actual different Pokemon that's faster and stronger doing the HP firing. But yeah, if you are using Glalie, you should use it as a lead, because it switches into almost nothing. It'll switch into Meganium and like Sableye, like stuff that really can't hit anything. It can switch into okay, but yeah, it's not designed to take more than a couple hits. It's not like a Sharpedo like Glass Cannon, but it's frail with the typing that gives it one fairly useless resistance. So yeah, that's the Spikers and how they shape the team. Obviously they're important, but there's so much more to a Spike's offense team as well, and naturally, kind of like the key bit is the offensive Pokemon. I'll get into like cores with these like a little bit later as well. Yeah, there's a lot. I'm sure you can see in the time below. I don't know how long this video is going to be. For me, I'm just like 8 minutes into it, but I don't know, maybe it'll be like half an hour, maybe it'll be an hour. Well, you'll know. I don't just yet while I'm talking. It's not like scripted, but I have got these lovely visual graphics, so that's something. But yeah, in terms of like the offensive Pokemon, here's just like a selection of them really. What you'll notice, like with most of them, they're fast Pokemon with a lot of attack power. It's it's pretty straightforward. What your top offensive Pokemon are going to be. It's these Pokemon with like really high speed and attack or special attack. Let's just sort of go like into like a little bit of detail about some of these, but obviously this is the sort of thing that could change with like future videos or with the tier developing and so on. But like Tauros, for example, there's like a choice band set, which is like really powerful, but there are a lot of great normal resistance on the tiers, so it's got some problems, but if you can eliminate like the normal resists, it's absolutely brutal. There's mixed Tauros, which can struggle to get through a few non-resists. And some resists will handle it even better, like Credillion and Armaldo will care even less, but on the other hand, it does cause teams that rely more on Pokemon that just like resist normal type, like Aggron and Misdreavus and Fortress and so on, it can cause them more trouble. And then there's also like a sub-Lychee set as well with like Return, Earthquake, Iron Tail is what I'd like to run on it, which I've not explored much, and that's could well be a set of the future. Even though it is huge Fortress bait, which is annoying, it can really mess up some teams. Crobat, this is a short of Electrode, it's the fastest Pokemon in the tier without Weather Up. It's got good bulk, good stabs. Sleep Talk is a move that you should be running if you're running Choice Band Crobat, because it's pretty hard to switch into, and with Sleep Talk mechanics in ADV, if you Sleep Talk with a Choice Band on, you switch out, then switch back in, you won't have burned any sleep turns. You can rinse and repeat as much as you like with that. So it's a pretty nice way of using it, but also be aware if you stay in and hit Sleep Talk twice, the second one will just fail. So you can only, once you've Sleep Talk once, you are forced to switch out if you want to do anything at all. So it's got its ups and its downs, but it's not too bad to have a fast defensive Choice Band Pokemon with Sleep Talk at all. Hits hard, and its coverage is hard to switch into because flying and normal together hits everything neutrally at least. So some stuff like Whiscash and Fizdef Torkoal will take it fine, whatever it does, but not many things will do that, especially on offense. So yeah, it can be a really nice way to punish stuff like Hypnosis Golduck if you can get it in, catch the Hypnosis. And if you don't, you also threaten to sort of attack with Sludge Bomb and force it out. So yeah, it's a good Pokemon with Tauros and Crobat, as well as like Lanoon, which we can mention as well briefly, is got some interesting ability as a Choice Band Sweeper with extreme speed. Lets it outspeed the entire just like everything is just like great against weather offense, is great against like Crobat and so on, and Tauros, and it can help a team that's like offensive but quite slow to have like a reliable fast cleaner. So yeah, there's that. But like these are all Pokemon that really do struggle with Fortress early on, but once you get rid of that particular bugbear, manage the hazard game early on, then they really can come into their own and be monstrous threats. Crobat in a similar vein can also run a sub-Lychee set, like I mentioned with Tauros. It's also pretty good because you get to exploit its coverage, which is just awesome. There's not much more to say about it. It's just like a great cleaner as well. Can be great at cleaning teams that do rely a bit more on their resistances to handle Crobat. Typhlosion. So this Pokemon might have like quite a nice move pool, but the main set you'll be running is the mixed one with Fire Blast, Thunder Punch, Earthquake, and usually HP Ice for Altaria, but HP Grass to lure Whiscash is an interesting option as well on it, 100%. And yeah, plus with like a Lumberry usually to take stuff like Fortress Toxic, Venomoth Sleep Powder and so on. It's also like a good lead and so on. It's great against Spikers. Yeah, it's just like a really dangerous offensive threat with spikes that doesn't have any of the downsides of choice locking and just has great coverage. It's all there is to it. Great offensive Pokemon. Sceptile, also a great offensive Pokemon. People have been loving this one since it's been added to the tier. There's lots of counterplay to it, but at the same time, if you make a mistake against it, it can get momentum really quickly with the Subseed set. There's also a mixed set or two and a Sub-Battaya set as well, which other people are quite keen on, have been experimenting with, but I just feel like the Subseed set is just so easy to play and so good. I think that those sets have some merit, but I'd mostly just rather run Subseed. Kadabra. This Pokemon used to be really good before we sort of figured out how to handle it. Before like Tauros was sort of really in the tier as well, which did certainly hurt it. It's still pretty fast. It's still faster than like Typhlosion. It's got Lumberry Synchronize, which Xatu has as well, but Kadabra's faster, which can really mess up Paraspam. Like that's really sort of a stronger suit is against Paraspam. But yeah, it's a fast, frail, offensive Pokemon. Xatu's kind of similar, as I sort of did mention. Kadabra does have better coverage since it has Thunder Punch, whereas Zatu has Giga Drain, so Kadabra doesn't have any issues with Mantine really, whereas Zatu kind of like support from something like Camerupt, which you see there, or maybe Golduck to Hypnosis and Mantine, all those kind of things. But yeah, Kadabra has better coverage. Zatu not as great, and it's a bit slower, but its typing offers some upsides, like a ground immunity. It adds more weaknesses as well, but ground immunity, grass resistance, so on can be quite nice. So yeah, Electrode is just a Pokemon that I think Electrode's a bit of a hard Pokemon to deal with psychologically, because you're just used to, lol, this Pokemon is shit, it's just fast and goes boom. And it really is so much more than that. But fast and goes boom is also not a bad description of it either. It doesn't actually have to run boom. A sub-toxic set is a way of playing it. And it has a lot of tools. I mean, it learns Taunt, it learns Thief, it learns Rain Dance, which is good for it on rain teams. It's faster than like Crobat and so on. Its bulk is not too bad. I mean, it lives like a Golduck Hydro Pump, which is honestly enough. It learns Light Screen as well, which you don't really see on Spike's offense much, although you could pair it with Fortress. It's a good idea maybe to try that to get yourself some free Spikes opportunities with that thing. Against like more balanced teams, but often you sort of see that paired with like Belly Drum Lanoon, which is a different kind of offense. But yeah, it's got a nice move pool. It's got a lot of utility options. It's really fast. It's bulky enough. It's actually a good Pokemon, but it can be hard to sort of psychologically recognize that it's a good offensive electric type. Golduck. This is the mother of all Pokemon. Actually, no, that sounds really weird. It's one of the best defensive Pokemon in the tier, and it's pretty solidly there. It's so good that some of its options may get taken away from it at some point, like Hypnosis, which is one of its defining traits, as well as Cloud9, which I would say, while it's not defining, it does just like stymie weather so much. And really makes a lot of these like Spikes offense teams like really hard to beat with other offense, because you can't just like, you know, put like a Vileplume on your team and have like that way of just like breaking through. You'll suddenly have your grass type stopped by a water type, which is just like really frustrating. But yeah, it's a really good like balance breaker as well. It's also got some other tools like Calm Mind 3 attacks with HP Grass to lure Lantern is an idea as well. Maybe with Lumberry as well. It's got a lot of options. In terms of its weaknesses, it's mostly just the fact that there are a couple of things that do handle it well, like Lantern, and then there's it's a bit slow against other offense. I mean, it can just about check like Typhlosion for you, but like everything else on this list, apart from Camerupt, which is pretty darn slow, outspeeds it. So his strength is just being like a disgusting balance breaker, which yeah, no wonder that something that's like that is so highly rated. Yeah, I think I briefly mentioned Camerupt as Muck Answer, Explosion. Even though it's like slow, I still sort of do want to plonk it under more of an offensive Pokemon, because even though it does like do some defensive jobs, it should sort of mostly still be thought of as a nuke with really good offensive coverage in its dual stabs plus explosion. And then there are sort of options you can consider, like Toxic, Substitute, Rock Slide, HP, Grass or Ice or whatever, but mostly those three moves sort of do everything it needs. So yeah, those are sort of a rundown of like some of the best defensive Pokemon in the tier. There are other options as well, like Nidoqueen or Ampharos or whatever as well. And maybe there's more added. Maybe you may as well also consider like Rain and Sun offense options as well. So don't consider this list exhaustive. But I wanted to give a breakdown on like some of the best offensive Pokemon and just like what they do like as solo, but I'll sort of get into how you pair them together as well a little later on. I just sort of want to go a bit one by one to start off with. And Yeah, now to touch on glue. So the thing with like glue Pokemon is that these are the Pokemon you don't build your team around. These are the Pokemon that for the most part you stick on the team once you've got 2 to 3 offensive Pokemon, maybe like your Spikes, maybe you want a Spin Blocker as well. We'll get to like utility Pokemon as well, but these are basically like, holy crap, I don't have a resistance to like 7 different types. How am I gonna like not lose to Crobat or whatever? We noticed actually that the fastest normal resist in the tier is Misdreavus. Like Tauros outspeeds every normal resist. So then you've also got to consider like mixed Tauros and so on, and or like maybe you like have an issue with like special threats and you want to go like Muck. So yeah, basically these Pokemon exist to handle those offensive threats that your team might struggle with, to give you some pivoting options so that you can exploit the few resistances your offensive Pokemon do have. And to a degree, they can be good offensive Pokemon in their own right. And so with Aggron, for example, the Choice Band set's not too bad. There are probably better Choice Band users like Golem in terms of like their offensive power, but Aggron has so many nice resistances that it's hard to pass up. Magneton, it's strong. It's easily walled, but it is strong. And it's fast. It's kind of fast. 70 speed is quick against some styles. Muck is pretty good offensively and just a crazy special tank at the same time. It's sort of, you might think of it as like a Snorlax, which you can imagine, comparing like Muck with Snorlax and Wishcast with Swampert is honestly not a bad move. Although I don't think ADV 50 has great comparisons with OU, like having a rock resist is nowhere near as key, although you probably should still have one. So the fact that Wishcash is a rock resist isn't the biggest deal, but it's still like a check to Tauros and Crobat and so on. So it's still good for checking just a plethora of threats. Yeah, gosh, I'm saying so much. I'm so sorry. Need to improve on my speaking. Right. And yeah, I don't want to go sort of like so in depth on these. Some of these Pokemon maybe don't quite belong. It's just like I've not really built offense, or I've got like Lantern as the glue necessarily, or like maybe like Slowking or something. The point is that this is sort of like more flexible when you go sort of digging through like, what do balance and store use? Is there like what fits best, and like can I adapt it a little bit for offense? Like even Whiscash on offense, you might go drop some of its defense and put like 100 or so EVs in special attack so that its surf kind of hurts Fortress a bit more. Like something simple like that sometimes makes a big difference as well. So yeah, that's glue. It's the Pokemon you do when you put in when you've already got 4 Pokemon. You're like, what am I weak to? And yeah, you use these to cover your holes. Yeah, with offense as well, you don't need to be quite as defensively solid, but you probably should still have resistances to most types and not get swept by the fast stuff in particular. Like the slower things, like the things that operate at a bit of a slower pace, like if your team like seems like it might struggle a bit with like Chimecho, then probably not as big of a deal as if you struggle with Crobat or if you struggle with Rain. so yeah, how it goes with that. And then utility Pokemon. Basically here's sort of like sleepers and spin blockers. Misdreavus is easily the most natural of these to fit on Spike's offense. It provides a ground immune. It's kind of a good glue in its own right. Sableye is as well, but it's less offensive. Misdreavus with like Subcalm Mind is actually a decent offensive threat. It's not amazing. Other Pokemon are better in terms of like just how scary they are. Like Kadabra is sort of just a bit better offensively if you compare the two, and they are quite similar. But Misdreavus' resistance, immunities and spin blocking make it a consideration as well. With Venomoth is a bit funny because you kind of would have to like stack it with Fortress or use it not as a lead. But it does sort of exist as like an alternative Pokemon that you use to like sleep and get momentum with like Baton Pass and so on. So I just thought I'd mention it, but I don't really think it fits as well on Spike's offense, but it's sort of like an idea. It's like with utility Pokemon as well, probably can't afford to fit more than like one of these. And you can definitely get away with not running any of them. It's not necessary. All Spike's offense need is Spikes, your offensive Pokemon, and enough glue to prevent you falling apart while you execute your own offense. That's the bread and butter of it. So, like, spin blocking isn't strictly necessary. Even though the tier does have a lot of spinners, like Mischievous is not always the greatest against all of them. Like Hitmonlee is not a common spinner, but it does outspeed it and has HP Ghost, and so on. So yeah, I wouldn't worry like a huge amount about fitting a spin blocker, but it's definitely nice to have, and some of the teams I made do have one. But yeah, let's get into. Well, first I'll do leads, because I did kind of explain most of this previously, but basically it's a case of spikers or anti-spikers. And yeah, if you're using Glalie, probably lead Glalie. If you're using Fortress, probably don't lead Fortress. And lead with whatever you see on the right that you have on your team. Fire types are great against both the spikers. Kadabra is great against both the spikers. Murk's pretty good against both the spikers. You have Focus Punch to 1-hit KO Glalie for what it's worth. And then Golduck as well is also great against the spikers, although not quite as good as the others. But Golduck is really good against all the other anti-spike type leads. It's a really great lead in general, and it's a really great Pokemon in general. So, yeah, I definitely sort of recommend leading like Golduck or Typhlosion, Camerupt, Muck, maybe Kadabra. If you're like running a Fortress based offense, Spike's offense. So yeah, just pretty quick on that one, to be honest. Offensive cores though. So I've put a few different offensive cores here, and I will go into detail on them, but it should be clear that A, this is not an exhaustive list. B, come up with your own. What's more important is why these cores work than what these cores are. Do feel free to steal them and make teams with them. But yeah, what's important is why they work. So first thing you'll notice, like with each of these cores, is no shared types. To me, it's pretty important to try and avoid type overlap defensively. To a large degree, it does depend a little bit, and on like rain, you will stack water types. That's how it is. But generally, these are Pokemon that often don't check very much defensively. Please at least like use a mix of them, and you'll have a much easier time like fitting a glue that means you won't fall over to something. So like if you were to run like Typhlosion and Camerupt together, or Lanoon and Tauros, or Kadabra and Xatu, yes, they target similar Pokemon defensively, but also they both get run over by like, I don't know, like Golduck, or they both have a trouble with like Absol, or I don't know, like that kind of thing. Or maybe they get run over by like Tauros, or maybe something as silly as like CB Hitmonlee is like good against it, or maybe like you struggle to get past, I don't know, Sableye. It's not a golden rule to not stack the types, but it's bad practice mostly. But I could see cases for it. Like, for example, if you're using Trick. If you're using, like, Trick Band Kadabra or, like, Trick Band Lanoon, then, like, pair it with, like, a Tauros or pair it with a Xatu. Like, okay, there's a good reason there why you would need to do it, because you're not really using the Kadabra or the Lanoon that much as an offensive X-type Pokemon. But most of the time, you'll have better results, in the long term at least, if you avoid type stacking defensively. Now, offensively, the other side of things is, why is it like these ones are not Kadabra and Camerupt, or Electrode and Sceptile, and, like, maybe those pairings can work, I just sort of pulled them out. Like, why is it like these specific cores as well? Because there's plenty of options where they don't share the same typing, but then, like, what's the next stage of that? How do I know? Well, like, I think Tauros and Kadabra go well together, but maybe I think that, like, Mischievous and Sceptile don't. It's because they target and pressure similar Pokemon defensively. So with the first core, with Tauros, Kadabra, Misdreavus, you've got to think, well, what are the answers to these Pokemon? Like, for Kadabra, you're talking about Aggron and Sableye and maybe Altaria as well. And, Tauros and Misdreavus can both also be checked by those Pokemon, and, potentially it can be a case of, your Kadabra sets up a Calm Mind, and then it ends up trading itself for a Sableye that's taking some spikes damage as it came in, and then maybe it's at 40%, and then it switches out, and then later that means that your Misdreavus can set up a Calm Mind and sweep. Like, that's conceptually, like, what it's about in terms of, like, the principle of, like, offensive pressure is, maybe you'll lose a Pokemon in the process, but it then, like, sets up your other Pokemon because of, like, the damage you've done, and keeping up momentum and so on. Then you make it count. So that's kind of like just how general purpose offense works. But like, I don't know, if you paired like Golduck with Tauros, which is like maybe not like, or Golduck, let's say Golduck with Sceptile, which is a pairing that you'll sometimes see. They do both pressure Muck, but like say you land a Hypnosis on like Lantern, it doesn't do Sceptile any good. It's like, well, you slept Lantern, but Sceptile's still going to be blocked by like their Muck or their Altaria or something like that, and Golduck didn't help you get through that at all. So maybe that pairing wasn't as good offensively as if you paired like the Golduck with the Typhlosion, which like can 2-hit KO Lantern with Earthquake. But it if Lantern can 1-hit KO it back, and it can switch in on Fire Blast, and if you've slept it, then that gives you the free turn where you can Earthquake, and maybe they won't have burned any turns, or maybe they'll have burned like one while you Hypnosis, and so the odds of them actually hitting and KOing you with Hydro Pumps like all of a sudden like really low. And you see there's a benefit of like that offensive pairing through like sleeping the Lantern. And then like that pair, Golduck, Electrode, Typhlosion, they all pressure Lantern, they all pressure Muck, which are two of the biggest special checks. And generally you do see this as well with offenses. Usually physical attackers go with other physical attackers, special attackers with other special attackers, and that kind of goes in most tiers. You probably be like quite biased heavily towards one or the other, because you'll probably be pressuring the same Pokemon. And Pokemon tend to be more special walls or physical walls and that kind of thing. So yeah, like with Golduck and Electrode and Typhlosion, yeah, Lantern and Muck, and like maybe like Clefable as well. And like with that core as well, you've also got an Explosion and like Electrode potentially as well, which is like another tool the offense can use as well. It's hard to stack Explosions in this tier, so it's why I've not been like, oh, you need 2 Explosions on your team. Like, you can make a good spike offense without that. To be honest, you might get 2 Explosions a lot, actually. 3 is probably where it's like really pushing it though. But it wouldn't be hard to fit 3 Explosions on a Spikes offense in OU, would it? With like, I don't know, like Forage, like Metagross and Snorlax. Gosh, my brain is like completely out of OU these days. But in OU, it's not too hard to fit a couple of Explosions either. And like really stack them. I mean, there are those teams actually where they have like 5 Explosions, where it's like Metagross, Cloyster, like there's like a Gengar, like a Snorlax, a Weezing, and a Camerupt or something like that, and you might have like 5 or 6 Explosions. Like those kind of things aren't really as possible in ADV 50 because the Explosion users are mostly a bit slower, and often like anti-synergistic as well. So yeah. But yeah, and then like Camerupt and Sceptile, I quite like that core as well with like Xatu, but Camerupt targets Pokemon like Altaria and Mantine and Whiscash, and like 2 of those 3 are not grounded, so they're not even affected by the spike, so the Explosion really is crucial. And they both check Sceptile as well, which is like a massive spikes abuser. So if you get rid of those, then maybe there will still be other Sceptile answers on the team. Maybe there will be like Altaria paired with Muck, or Lautaro paired with Flareon or something like that. And maybe Sceptile can put in a bit more work with like a sub-seed set or something like that. That's kind of the idea. So yeah, making use of like these shared offensive synergies, maybe like these explosions or hypnosis or just setup moves or something like that, paired with Spike's pressure, is enough to generate good offense. How you go from that to like making your offense great and like unbeatable and so on, like it's the joy of Pokemon. Good luck finding it. See how far you can push things. But for generally decent offense, that's kind of where you want to start off. Right, so now finally I just want to come to some specific examples. Most of these teams are in the sample teams, and here we've got, this is one of the Fortress Spikes offenses. I think most of these teams will be Glalie ones, but here you can see, because I've got a Fortress on the team, I've not led with it. Instead, I've led with Golduck, which is a great lead. Yeah, and then I've got Taurus and Crobat that work together nicely because they both pressure physical checks like Whiscash and Torkoal and Aggron, and then I've got Kadabra, which also works nicely with those two because it also like pressures Aggron and Sableye, and then Golduck and Sceptile together pressure Muck. And there's all of these different offensive synergies, and this is actually one of those rare teams where like there's actually not really any glue on it. So even though like maybe pairwise there's not always a great amount of synergy, like maybe Golduck and Crobat like don't particularly have great synergy, but I've managed to fit 5 offensive Pokemon in this team without a glue, and I've not needed one, and the team still functions very nicely offensively. This team probably would suffer more if Cloud9 was banned, because it does look kind of sus against Rain as it is, even not like hugely, but it really becomes important to execute your own offense there. This is another team. Here we see the Glalie with like the Endurance Salak Berry, so that it's got like that faster explosion and it can check stuff like Crobat and so on. You see here we've got like Magneton and Muck that both provide a huge amount of resistances and like have their own offensive benefits as well. On this team, this one's a lot more glue heavy, especially if you count like Misdreavus as glue. Then there's not actually that much offense here, but all of like the gluey Pokemon are as offensively inclined as they can be. Misdreavus with the Subcombine threat set as a threat. Again, we've got the Ensalak Glalie as well, which gives the team a bit more speed because Taurus is the fastest thing. So like Crobat and Sceptile and so on do potentially cause some trouble. There's another team with like different offensive threats. I'm not going to go like in huge detail on these. I'm just sort of showing you. Here's some examples. These ones are all examples. I've got like one other fresh one, but here you can see instead the idea is the HP Fire Glalie, which is paired with mixed Tauros and Sublight Crobat, and there's these benefits to like luring Fortress paired with that Crobat, for example. But at the same time, there's enough tools to mess with it that if you don't land Glalie's HP Fire on Fortress, your game isn't over. And then like this one also got the Ensalak Glalie. This one I've got that camera Sceptile core that I mentioned with like Xatu as well, so it's like really nice if you manage to target Mantine. Golduck as well, which can like hypnosis the Mantine, and yeah, that one's kind of quite heavily focused against beating Mantine, which isn't even that common of a threat at the moment, but it's still kind of like something to organize the team around. There you've got Aggron, which provides some glue, and yeah, again the team is like kind of slow. You do have Sceptile that's fast, but Ensalak Glalie does definitely help with that as well. So yeah, those are some examples. I'll include pastes of them below as well. I hope you found this useful in terms of like understanding how to build Spike's offense, like what makes up a team, how do you choose a lead, how do you make an offensive core, what makes an offensive core better or worse to some degree, what do many of the top threats in the tier do, and why do you need a glue? Can you get away without one? All of those questions. I hope that this has provided a lot of food for thought, helped you on your journey to make your own teams, and I hope to God they don't suck. I do think, like, one thing with me, probably people have noticed this at this point, is that I do get really frustrated when I don't like people's teams, and I want to, like, especially, like, prove that I can beat them because of it. Which it may make me a little bit salty at times, but really just what I want to see is just see people, like, playing the game and building, like, really well, and yeah, just trying to give you guys as many resources as possible so I don't get angry about that. Or at least so I'm, like, angry, like, can you not, like, look at these resources rather than just build whatever. I know some of you will still build your team with Toxic, Flamethrower, Calm Mind, Slow King. Like, it's still going to happen. I don't know why you guys have Slow King. If you've not looked at the sample sets, you've probably put a Slow King on your team and been like, yeah, this thing with Flamethrower and Ice Spoon together is going to be so good. So good. I don't know why that does seem to be a Pokemon that, like, people certainly kind of love when they build. And to be fair, I don't use it that much, and I do underuse Slowking, so maybe that's the reason. Is they're looking at my teams like, there's no Slowking, so that's where I'm going to build my team around Slowking. Anyway, yeah, I hope this helped a lot. Please go out, play ADV 50, join the seasons, play casual games, join the team building contests, chat in the Discord, use Amphibot, say hello, build some Spikes offense, give it a whirl. I'll see you around. ADV 50 Discord in the link, in the description. Teams that I've shown in the description. Drop a like, comment, subscribe. All lovely things to do, although I doubt I'm making it as a YouTuber. That's not really the plan. I'm just here to make good ADV 50 content and get you guys hooked on the tier and playing it at a high level. I'll see you around. Bye-bye.